Hey everyone, David here with what I believe to be the inevitable, because there's a new Marvel movie out this weekend, and along with it and all the reviews for it come all the spoiler talks, because there's bound to be something in the movie, regardless of what kind of movie it is. There's going to be something that is going to connect it to the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and out of all the movies to be able to do this, Avengers Age of Ultron is definitely no exception. Ant-Man may be the first movie in a while, maybe since the first Iron Man, that has the least amount. Okay, maybe Guardians of the Galaxy, but then again, that also deals with the Infinity Stones and all that. So anyways, let's go ahead and just focus on this movie for now. I'm excited for Ant-Man, but let's go ahead and talk about what I couldn't talk about in my review for this movie, the spoilers for Avengers Age of Ultron. So let's go ahead and appropriately start with what was actually at the beginning of this movie, and how I mentioned in my review that the beginning actually connects the movie to the television series Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And if you've been watching that show, then you are going to be one of the few people that will not be a little bit confused by how the Avengers are actually together at the beginning of this movie, because the movie literally starts off with Iron Man, Thor, Cap, and the Hulk just throwing down, as well as Black Widow and Hawkeye, let's not forget them, throwing down against the remains of Hydra's legions to try to get to Loki's scepter after locating it. Now, people are probably going to be a little bit confused. As awesome as that opening scene is, with that tracking shot, the cool action sequences, the choreography, the special effects, everything, maybe some people were a little confused by why are they after Loki's scepter, who tipped them off on Loki's scepter, and how do they come together? Why is Thor here all of a sudden? And sure, we saw them go their separate ways and still maintain some kind of connection, but how did Tony get an extra suit after seemingly blowing them all up at the end of Iron Man 3? Now, that is actually the only thing that I don't have an actual answer to. Maybe he had one stashed up, just like Nick Fury pulled his Deus Ex Machina by pulling out a helicarrier out of nowhere, which does take a little bit of the wind out of the sails that was Captain America the Winter Soldier, because one of the interesting things about Hydra dismantling S.H.I.E.L.D. from within the inside is the fact that there aren't that many resources anymore. So for Nick Fury to pop out of nowhere and be like, look, I got a helicarrier that I had stashed somewhere, in the garage, it was like, okay, then how many of these do you actually have stashed around the world? And a similar thing could be said about Tony with the two suits that he has in this movie. Like, where did those come from if he seemingly blew up all of them at the end of Iron Man 3? And chances are he did the same thing with Nick Fury. He just couldn't resist, so he went ahead and made a couple of suits on the side and put them away somewhere. But what I did know about this opening sequence was why they were all there. At the end of the last episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and yes, I will talk about some spoilers for that show, so if you haven't caught up on the show, then I'm sorry, but you might want to skip ahead a little bit. But at the ending of the last episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is actually more like the prequel to Age of Ultron, in which the ending actually has Coulson, who is actually not, who the Avengers don't know is alive, actually through Maria Hill calls in the Avengers and says, look, I've located Loki's scepter because I got this intel saying that it's somewhere in this country and it's time to perform Theta Protocol. And that's the code name for bringing in the Avengers to actually come together towards this force. And ultimately, it made Coulson responsible for Age of Ultron. If he hadn't called in the Avengers, then Tony wouldn't have gotten his hands on the scepter, he wouldn't have had those 3 days to mess around with it, and he wouldn't have created Ultron, or at least finished Ultron, because he already created him at that point, but he needed to find some kind of algorithm, and through the magic of the scepter, he was able to do that. So it's a little neat that the character that they all believe is dead is kind of, sort of, not completely, but in more ways than none, responsible for the events of this movie completely. One of the things that may or may not go a little bit underappreciated about this movie, considering all the stuff that goes on within it, is the little segment that kind of sets up the Black Panther movie that's set to be released in, I think, 2018, which is a long way from, oh, not really. I mean, you gotta consider the fact that it's been 3 years since the first Avengers, and I feel like it was just last year. And in another 3 years, not only are we gonna get part 1 of Avengers 3, but also Black Panther and all these other Marvel movies in between, and oh my god, it's just so much. But let's go ahead and talk about the little segment that takes place in Wakanda, I believe, Wakanda, Africa, which is the home that I think originally was a village, but now it's an actual city, a thriving city that it births the Black Panther. That's where he comes from. But it also births his arch villain, who is actually set up in this movie, played by Andy Serkis. His name is Ulysses Klaue, aka Claw. and you actually see him get his hand taken away here by Ultron himself, which was a darkly humorous scene. But I like the little setup, and Andy Serkis, I love this man, and I'm looking forward to what he does with the character. The little bit that he does have in this movie, which is practically a cameo, but it's a really good cameo. I think he did a good job with the role, and I'm looking forward to seeing him go up against Black Panther in that movie. And it was a nice little setup that I think people are gonna just not notice it, or at least people that aren't familiar with the comics, aren't familiar with the other Marvel movies that are going to be coming out in the future, and also the characters that are actually living within this universe. Like, for example, the average moviegoer, like some of my friends, are going to go see this movie and they're just going to recognize the main Avengers, but they're not going to know who this guy is. And it's only going to be until I tell them they're going to be like, oh, that's interesting. Who's Black Panther? It's also in the segment where we have the very famous Hulk versus Hulkbuster scene that actually results in something that I feel like from now on, writers and directors are going to have to address in future superhero or basic science fiction movies, and that is whenever two very powerful figures have some kind of battle in a city and they level it, they have to address the disastrous results, whether it be the human casualties or the damage, and they kind of touch that a little bit in this movie where people are downright hating the Avengers, with the exception of the news outlets because they obviously get to feed on that and make money off of that. But they do make a reference to people not being a huge fan of the Avengers at that point because they caused a tremendous amount of damage to the city of Wakanda there. And I'm wondering if that's going to be some kind of stepping stone for the introduction of Black Panther. Like, hey, the city needs this person to help it rebuild, and that's where Black Panther is going to come in. And from what I hear, that's actually a little bit of the plot of the new Daredevil series that's connected to the MCU. I haven't actually watched the show. I know, blasphemy. I'm saving it up, or I'm finishing a couple of shows. Gotham is about to end. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. only has a few episodes left, and then I'll go ahead and get started on Daredevil. And very much looking forward to that. But I feel like a similar thing is being done with Black Panther here, and I'm definitely looking forward to it. Now, I mentioned in the review that the end credits scene was a little on the short side. It's literally like, okay, maybe I exaggerated when I called it a Vine video, but it's less than 30 seconds, like 15, 20 seconds, and all it really is it looked like a vent at first. I thought it was a vent. And for some strange reason, I thought it was going to be a vent in a facility that Spider-Man was going to be in there. And they were going to, give us a little Easter egg to Spider-Man being part of the MCU after that big announcement, I think last month or the month before, saying that Sony is going to work with Marvel to bring Spider-Man into the MCU. And that was going to be totally awesome. And for a second there, I thought that's what it was going to be. Because I saw like something rotating like that and it looked like a vent. I don't know, it just looked like maybe something that Spider-Man can crawl through. But then you see an object rise from below, and it's the Infinity Gauntlet without the Infinity Stones. And then through what I thought was a vent is actually some kind of mechanical door. It opens up, and in walks Thanos, puts in the glove, and says, "Fine, I'll do it myself." Which is connecting to why Ultron was evil from the get-go, considering that Tony was using the technology within the scepter that was able to control minds. And because of that, it's why Thanos says, "I'll do it myself," because he was controlling these people. So even Thor, Tony, and Captain America were talking amongst themselves there towards the end, saying that they were pawns of a bigger plan, and somebody's controlling the pieces. And that's ultimately Thanos. That's why he says, "Fine, I'll do it myself." And all it really is just the end credit scene was mainly just a little bit to get you hyped up for Infinity Wars or Infinity War, whatever, in 2018, 2019. And I just feel like they're it's like they're running a little bit too fast, and therefore they don't know what to put in their end credit scenes anymore. So they're like, oh, let's just film this tiny little bit to just get people stoked up without actually giving us any new information, because that's ultimately what the end credit scene was. But I can't fault them too much for that, because hey, you gotta make do with what you got. And from what I hear, Joss Whedon had an awful lot of troublesome moments while making this movie that I'm pretty sure the end credit scene was practically one of them. But I did think it was rather cool that from the get-go, the Scepter was responsible, along with the calling in from Coulson and the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., was responsible for Ultron being born and being evil from the start. Still, I wish I could have had that development with Ultron, being that he's an artificial intelligence. I was hoping that he would have that transformation of going from, okay, I'll protect you, to, wait, you guys need protecting from yourselves, so therefore I must eliminate you, and therefore only then can the world survive. However, it does a good job at throwing back to the first Avengers, because who gave Loki this scepter with his power? Thanos. Remember, he was meeting up with Thanos. He was meeting up with the that guy with the mouth. I can't remember his name, but he was meeting up with them. And you got that end credit scene that also featured Thanos. So far, both Avengers movies have Thanos in the end credit scenes, and then the third movie is gonna have Thanos in the entire movie. But it's kind of neat that Thanos is the main theme coursing through these Avengers movies, and it trickles in some of these standalone Marvel movies. I mean, he definitely had an awful lot to do with what was going down in Guardians of the Galaxy. Not so much with Iron Man 3 or Captain America: The Winter Soldier, but still, he is that figure that our Avengers are gonna have to go up against in the end game, and that is probably going to cement the transitional period of what we're going to end up with, should the ending of this movie be any indication. But before I get to that, let's go ahead and talk about this other character whose fate I don't know how to feel about. And that's Pietro Maximoff, aka Quicksilver, who unfortunately bites the dust in this movie. Whedon, in all his Whedonness, has to kill off a character that you were going to like, but I think that out of all the characters, Quicksilver was the one. I don't think he was what I consider the least popular choice, because he was just introduced in this movie, and even though I liked him, trust me, it did kind of hurt a little bit seeing him being riddled with all those bullets in a very selfless act. All right, he saved Hawkeye and that boy, and that was a very heroic way to go. But is it just me, or did I feel like Hawkeye was supposed to be the one to die after giving him all that backstory, and giving him a wife and kids and all this very pathological past to make that emotional gut punch when he does die even more heart wrenching? Instead, it's like Whedon said, you know what, that's probably going to be a little bit too obvious, so let's go ahead and make it Quicksilver. And I feel like maybe, just maybe, they did shoot a scene in which Hawkeye dies. Why? Because remember, there's that scene where Hawkeye talks to the Scarlet Witch, and he's like, hey, I have a bow and arrow. None of this makes sense, but you are an Avenger, that pep talk. And then they go out there and they fight. Remember, there's a scene in the trailers. Like, there were a couple of trailers that had this shot, but it never made it into the movie. I don't know if I was the only one that noticed this, but there's a shot that has Scarlet Witch, like, screaming, going, ah! And she does do that in the movie, but not in the location that she was in those shots in the trailer. In the trailer, she's doing this in the area where Hawkeye was when he came out of the building after the pep talk. Right away, right there. In the movie, however, she's by the drill that's going down, and that's where she feels it in her that Quicksilver just got killed. I feel like maybe there is an alternate scene where Hawkeye was supposed to die, and that's why Scarlet Witch is right there going, no, because she's in that exact same location where Hawkeye was. And like I said, there were so many moments where I feel like at any time there was going to be a bullet or a laser shooting right through Hawkeye's chest, especially when they're like walking away and Hawkeye's like, oh, you speedy little bastard, and it's like, I don't know, it just had all the makings for killing off Hawkeye, but instead they went with Quicksilver, and it would have definitely hurt, but it would have been that bold decision that a sequel should make, but instead they went with Quicksilver. And like I said, I don't know how to feel about that. There's a part of me that's okay with it, but another part of me wishes I could have seen Wanda and Pietro be part of the new Avengers. Oh, spoiler alert, that's actually what I'm gonna talk about now. Yes, because some of the actors that play them in Avengers have these little things called contracts, and they are, after all, human, and at some point, or later rather than sooner, they're gonna get tired. Just recently, Hugh Jackman made the announcement that the next standalone Wolverine movie is going to be his last, and I'm pretty sure the role's going to be recast in a few years in some kind of reboot, and Fox is going to continue to try to make more X-Men movies. So the Marvel Cinematic Universe is trying to throw us hints that, hey, this original lineup of the Avengers may not last forever. In fact, it's probably not going to last forever. And Infinity Wars Part 1 and 3 and 2 and 3. Part 1 and 2 are probably going to be the final movies for these actors to play those iconic Avengers. So I like that they're trying to soften the blow of not seeing these actors play these characters anymore by introducing what are probably going to be the new Avengers at the ending of this movie. who are going to consist of War Machine, Vision, Scarlet Witch, and Falcon. And I knew when they cast Anthony Mackie, there was something about him that made me think, I think he's going to be a bigger part of this. And sure enough, it looks like he's going to be a new Avenger. And the ending shows this, being led by both Black Widow, or at least, was it Black Widow, or was it Maria Hill who was by his side? I think it was, I can't remember, but it was Captain America, and then you had either Black Widow or Maria Hill. I can't remember, but at the ending scene, he's like, Avengers, cut to black. It was such a tease, man. Fucking weed and such a tease. But anyways, we got a new set of Avengers because God knows where Bruce Banner ended up at the end of the movie, because he clearly does not want to get found anymore. And Tony is going off and doing his own thing, and who knows how he's going to reappear in the MCU, being that there's no Iron Man 4 currently being planned. So, should he appear in Infinity War? Chances are. I mean, we know he's going to be in Civil War, but will he actually be Iron Man in a standalone movie, or is he going to be continuing to be an Avenger? Because who knows if he's going to be some kind of Avenger type role in Civil War. Maybe he'll just be Tony Stark for the majority of the movie and not even Iron Man. Let's hope not. I would really like to see Iron Man and Captain America throw down. We already had Iron Man versus Hulk. It's only suitable that we get that interpretation from Civil War in which Iron Man goes up against Captain America. But we do get a new brand of Avengers, and like I said, this is the MCU, Kevin Feige, or however you pronounce his last name, throwing us a bone, throwing us a hint that we better get used to this should we have a new shakeup, because they did admit that the Avengers are going to change. The lineup of the Avengers are going to change, and chances are this is where we're going to end up with by the time Infinity War ends. So that about does it for my spoiler video. There's not really much else that I can really talk about, but I'm pretty sure this video is long enough already. So please post in the comments, being that this is the spoiler video, you can go ahead and let loose. Alright, I'm pretty sure that people that view my videos are smart enough to know that this comment will consist of spoilers, being that this is a spoiler video. So that should be no problem. So go ahead and let it all out in the comments, and let me know what you guys thought of some of the bigger events that did happen in Avengers Age of Ultron. And I'll see you guys next time.